This fox performs something unbelievable in response to a snake attacking a child. Many individuals believe that foxes are nothing more than harmful pests that need to be eliminated to protect humans and cattle. One of these adorable creatures, however, completely changed the life of one young boy. Dylan was a typical American living in a tiny rural community. Dylan, his father owned the farm where he grew up, and he taught his son all he knew about farming. When Dylan was still a youngster, Dylan received instruction on how to operate a proper farm, including how to care for animals and develop crops. Nevertheless, despite all his father had taught him, the young boy continued to have dreams of enrolling in college to get a degree in a high-paying career. Dylan left the farm when the time was right and old enough to do so. He then enrolled in college in the adjacent metropolis and earned the law degree. Dylan, his father, tragically died unexpectedly while he was gone, leaving the farmhouse and the property to Dylan. Dylan was distraught at learning of his passing, and despite completing his degree, he decided to go back to the community where he was raised in every way he could. The young guy wanted to feel close to his father. He thus decided to start farming since his father had taught him how to do it when he was a little lad. Dylan was a diligent individual who cherished his work on the farm. He eventually met Julia, a young woman who had also been raised on a farm. They'd bonded over their shared love of their jobs right away. They soon got married and had a child on the way. Dylan and Julia worked happily on his farm together over the years, and he taught their son Ethan everything he knew, just as his father had done for him. He enjoyed taking his father for walks in the neighboring woodland. Father and son would happily spend hours walking in the woods together, admiring the beauty of the natural world. When Ethan was 9 years old, he asked to help his father plan one of the fields. Dylan declined, telling the small child that he should remain at home where he was cooler, since it was too hot to go outside. However, neither Dylan nor his kid could have predicted what would happen that day as they left for work. Dylan was using his tractor to plant one of his fields when he unexpectedly saw a strange item laying in its spot. The young farmer decided to halt the tractor and have a closer look at the enigmatic item, since he had no idea what it was. But as he drew near, Dylan saw that the object was a fox, a young one. However, contrary to what he had anticipated, the animal didn't stand in bold. The farmer then realized that the fox was very emaciated and wounded. The juvenile animal seemed to be by itself without a mother around to assist it. Dylan felt sympathy for the animal right away, since he knew its mother might have been killed by another farmer who simply regarded it as a nuisance. Dylan gathered the fox into his arms and started walking back to his house. After realizing that he could not allow the defenseless animal to fight for itself, the farmer decided to temporarily house the fox in his garage with some food and water. Since he was unsure of how the animal would respond to his wife and kid, Dylan departed to finish plowing his field after he was certain the little fox would be safe. Dylan went to check on the little fox he had discovered as soon as he got home later that evening. The farmer entered the garage and found the animal curled up in a corner. Having consumed the food and water he had left, Dylan decided to test the fox to see how it behaved and if it would be peaceful and gentle enough to be brought into the home. He knew the animal wouldn't live by itself, but he didn't want it to harm his family. After a few days, Dylan started to think that the young fox wouldn't hurt his family, since every time he went into the garage, the animal seemed happy to see him and would bounce around him, playfully. Dylan told Ethan and Julie about the fox after making up his mind. The small youngster was thrilled to have a companion so unique, but Julia was a little tenser. She was concerned that the fox would bite her kid and didn't want him to be hurt. But after a few days and much comfort from Dylan, Julia came to understand that the fox would not hurt her family and grew to care for their strange pet. Dylan considered reintroducing the fox, whom Ethan had named Sax, to the adjacent woodland. Once it had fully recovered, he was aware that it belonged in the woods, since it was a wild animal. Dylan, however, couldn't stomach the idea of splitting up with Sax. After seeing how devoted his good had become to the animal, Sax quickly established himself as Ethan's closest buddy and the two would do everything together, from playing outside to dining. However, as he got older, the fox displayed more wild and independent behavior as he would hunt the mice and rats around the property. He no longer needed Dylan to give him food. The young animal also started to leave the home for long periods. Ethan became disturbed, and he saw that his power was getting more and more estranged. He attempted to persuade his father to keep the fox while Sax was away, old animal who belonged in the forest with his kind. Dylan only explained to his kid that it was a good thing that the animal wanted to go since he would be much happier with a family of his own. Ethan consented to let Sax go and have a life of his own. So he led the fox to the edge of the neighborhood woods. One day he bid the animal farewell and vowed to never forget him before admonishing him to seek out his family in the woods. But for trotting to the woodland, the fox kindly let go of the boy's hand. Ethan would visit the woods every day for the first several months in the hopes of at least catching a glimpse of his grandfather. Unfortunately, he never did. He even started checking less often over time before deciding that Sax had vanished. Dylan tried to console his kid and even made a promise to bring him a puppy, but Ethan was aware that nothing could ever take the place of the pet fox he had grown to love. Ethan was playing with his new dog in the front yard, a few months after saying goodbye to the fox. Julia was in the kitchen preparing supper, while Dylan was on the roof of the house, patching a hole that was allowing water to enter. The only noises on this quiet day were the chirping and even chuckling of the birds. A sudden scream ripped through the air, ruining the tranquility. When Dylan heard teeth and screaming, he sprang to his knees and quickly descended the ladder from the roof. Ethan was shivering in the front yard. In the meantime, a deadly snake just a few steps from him looked to be quite agitated. The reptile started to bark at Ethan, his new dog, but as it turned to face him, it fled in terror. Ethan was unable to move because he was afraid the snake might attempt to pounce on him. Even though he closed his eyes and prepared for the terrible bite, as the beast flitted closer, it never materialized. When he opened his eyes, he heard her roar and a few yells. He was in awe of what he witnessed. Sosis was in front of him, and the snake was laying dead by the animal feed. Ethan must have screamed, causing the fox to hear it and rush to his aid. They will in turn the corner of the home at the same time, only to see his kid laughing heartedly with an old acquaintance. After playing together for a few hours and revisiting their happy childhood memories, Sax let Ethan his hand and started to leave this time, rather than feeling sad. Ethan was pleased to see his old buddy leading a morally correct life. Just moments before the fox vanished into the woodland when Ethan saw a bunch of baby fox cubs. He was certain that Sax would be okay.